How's it going, everybody, and welcome to How Good Is It Really? My name is Jeremiah.
And I'm Luke.
And today we're going to be talking about episode 5 of season 1? Season 1 of Kenobi.
Alrighty, so right off the bat, there's one thing that I want to kind of mention as a preface just because it's going to become relevant in the future.
Okay, go for it.
Lightsaber physics. I don't know why this is such an inconsistent point, but I feel like lightsabers are kind of the MacGuffin that Disney doesn't understand. They can't get the buttons right, they can't get the name of the crystals right, and they can't get the power right. No one seems to understand how lightsabers work, and I don't think anybody really cares because I think Disney has a very normie understanding of a science fiction genre that is... It's not really science fiction, but lightsabers themselves are science fiction.
Well, Star Wars is definitely science fiction.
Yeah, more fantasy than not, but...
More science fiction.
But yes, it relies more on the conventions of science fiction to convey its story. Anyway, lightsabers specifically do have very specific rules about how they operate. They're not just magic swords that just do what you want when you want.
What?
Yeah, for real. Somebody needs to tell whoever is writing these episodes or whoever is in charge of Disney lore, because everything about lightsabers that I've seen so far from Disney Star Wars has sucked, with the exception of the Clone Wars final season that was directly produced under the supervision of Disney, and the Bad Batch is decently good, followed with the depictions of Ahsoka Tano in the second season of The Mandalorian. Those were good. I didn't see any issues, and I paid attention because lightsabers are arguably my favorite thing. It's how I make my money. So I pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Well, Star Wars is much more your bag than mine. I'm the normie in this situation.
Very much so. But even he and a lot of other, not to be derogatory, but just normies, people that are outside
it is my understanding
the culture,
that lightsabers should not bounce off of things.
No. The only thing that they should bounce off of is...
lightsabers?
Other lightsabers.
Like saber staff thingies?
Yes. Anything that is...
I don't know what they're called.
An energy field. Ray shields specifically, which are like energy fields, essentially. I'm not going to get too much in the science of it because it doesn't matter, but basically just it's energy on energy, and that just propels itself like two magnets. The Magna Guard staffs in Revenge of the Sith is probably the best example I can think of that.
Okay.
Other lightsabers, which obviously is what it is, and in the expanded universe, a mineral called cortosis. And there is one other in-universe thing that can resist a lightsaber, and that is Beskar, Mandalorian steel.
Right.
Now, and it's just the denseness of the material is such that lightsabers, on first glance,
it cannot heat
penetrate
it fast enough to cut through it immediately.
To melt through it, essentially.
It can.
With enough exposure.
Yes.
But cortosis does not work the same way, where cortosis actually will short out and diffuse the energy cycle. That is, it's a perpetual battery. If you understand how
lightsaber...
lightsaber...
the kyber crystal?
Basically, yeah. It just unlocks it. Reference for those who get it. Anyway, that's essentially...
I've been playing too many games recently where I've been getting pissed off because I keep getting stun locked by mobs of just like tiny little ads, and it's just...
Yeah.
It's been on my mind lately.
Yeah, it's an interrupt ability, basically. And what cortosis does is it just basically interrupts the signal, shuts off the lightsaber, and renders it useless. Okay. It is essentially useless against... Lightsabers are useless against cortosis. Great game that went into great deal about that. It was an amazing plot line. Was Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast. Amazing game. Go play it. It's available on PlayStation 4, Xbox, all the stores. Okay. It's a great game. Anyway...
I will not.
I just wanted to add that as a preface because it will become relevant in the spoiler section of this episode. But without further ado, let's hit our categories so we can talk about what you all came here for.
Okay, starting off. Writing.
Much better.
Yes, writing for this episode...
Significant improvement over 4.
...is a definite improvement over the previous episode, for sure.
And that's saying something.
Wonderful.
No.
But it has some really good stuff. It has some really good stuff in it, but it still suffers from some of the same issues that the previous episodes have.
It's becoming increasingly obvious to the normies as well as to the hardcore fans and the critics, those who are being honest enough to dare to anger the mouse, that Deborah Chow was not the right choice for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which should really be called the Obi-Wan / Reva show, because there are not really an overabundance, but there is far too much content that does not directly revolve, or involve Obi-Wan directly.
To be fair, counterpoint, in any show, you need the villain to have an adequate amount of screen time
in order to flesh out their
things
motivations. Agreed. Totally 100% have zero issue with that. The problem I have is that Obi-Wan, from the very beginning, has been used as a bait and switch to set up future Star Wars material. We are going to get a Reva show, and if you do not agree, you are not paying attention, because this has happened numerous times in Disney's. This is one of their standard playbook routines. They do this with Marvel. They've done this with Star Wars, and it is going to happen in Obi-Wan. It is absolutely a given fact, and we will prove it in the spoiler section. But as far as writing is concerned, it's a 6.5 for me. It wasn't the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It wasn't hot trash, though. It was. Okay. I enjoyed it, and I will say that up front.
6.5 is good.
I have friends that have accused me of hating on it just to be a salty old man. And while I have plenty of reasons to hate on well-deserving garbage that Disney has produced, this episode is not that bad. There are some issues, but it is not.
I think that's why we balance each other out pretty well.
Yeah.
You lean towards talking about the negative things, and I just lean towards talking about the positive things.
I do come at Disney Star Wars very hard, because I feel like everyone's just too scared to upset the mouse because it's Disney, and you don't get kickbacks, you don't get invited to private things. We saw that actually with the Star Cruiser Hotel, which flopped miserably because it was, I don't know if you know much about this, but
Never heard of it.
Yeah, most people that aren't in the know to know don't, but basically Disney has a proprietary, one-of-a-kind experience where you can pay $5,000 for I think a 3-day stay at a Star Cruiser Hotel.
Me about this before.
It is a money pit if I've ever heard of one. It is awful, but the only people who are being honest about their experience are the people who paid out of their own pocket to attend. There's a great YouTube channel by the name of Doomcock, who actually has exclusive footage with a gentleman who claims to have paid out of his own pocket to experience it firsthand, and narrates all of those experiences. And he has far too much information that is corroborated by the Disney shills, because that's what they are, shills. They're paid to have an opinion that's positive because they're cowards, and they also are just, that's their revenue stream, is just they make Disney happy by putting out propaganda that gets other people to spend money there. Anyway, the Star Cruiser Hotel was a huge flop, and it was largely only sold to the public, normies specifically, not hardcore fans. It was sold to normies as the ultimate Star Wars experience by these same Disney shills. Bringing it back to what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
With Obi-Wan, there are things that I absolutely despise and hate about corporate Disney just pimping out Star Wars to make money. Now, you can say it was there always to make money. That's true, but it was also done with a secondary intent, I would say a much more important intent, from George Lucas to be able to tell a story that was very personal to him, that he loved, and it was obvious because it came across in the art form. It just does. When someone loves something and they make it, and you can tell. It's just obvious.
Yeah.
There's no heart in a lot of what Disney has put out with Star Wars. It's just either woke, which on the surface is, I guess some people doesn't bother them. I don't really know if those people have an inner monologue, because I don't understand why it doesn't bother you. But if you agree with that political ideology, that makes sense. But either that, or it's just bankrupt from a narrative standpoint, where motivations don't make sense. The characters behave and do things that don't make sense. The pacing and plot are just contrived copy and pastes from much better other material. And this episode of Obi-Wan is by far the best of the season.
Yeah,
that is what most people are saying across the board. It is good for the most part, but there are scenes that really cripple what would otherwise be a very good, well-written plot. And we'll talk about that in spoilers. But just getting that off my chest up front, just so that I know that the haters, specifically people that I've talked to that know me, that just think that I just want to poo-poo on everything Disney Star Wars because I hate it. While that's true, I have justified reasons for not liking it, and just wanted to give that disclaimer up front. But I'll let Jeremiah take it from here.
All right. I don't have anything to add to that.
As far as next categories and
but next category is acting, and I have thoughts about this. I don't know if I should say it here or wait till spoilers.
Let's save it for the spoilers. But I agree with you too, and I would.
I don't think you do. I have not mentioned.
Maybe this is a different one. Then
this is something I have not mentioned to you yet.
But
either way, we'll talk about specifics later on. But it's fine.
Yeah, I didn't see anything that was legendarily performative or that people are going to remember for decades. Like the scene where, Ewan McGregor is pouring out his heart as he is watching, Anakin burn to death at the side of
as bad as the acting is in all the prequels, largely due to George Lucas not knowing how to direct a film, Ewan McGregor sold that scene the most.
Absolutely. And I mean, Hayden Christensen gets a lot of salt for being told to act the way that he did.
Right. The problem with the prequel is not the actors, it's George Lucas. Just hands down. Like everybody, like all of the Oscar-winning and Oscar-nominated actors that are in those movies, no, it just isn't a coincidence that all of them give bad performances in the same film. It was just not directed well, and they were not given good direction on what George Lucas wanted.
But the narrative in those movies is a cohesive whole that makes sense. But
anyway, for the acting, I would go 7.
I was going to give it a 6.
Go 6?
Yeah.
I can go 6 with you, actually. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Cinematography.
Good.
Actually, the way things were shot were actually pretty good.
Yeah, there were a couple of really awesome battle sequences. We're not going to give you too many spoilers, but honestly,
but
it was going to come to a head anyway. You knew that this was kind of where they were going, so that's not giving too much away. But they were shot really well. I liked it.
Yeah.
There were a couple though editing choices that really not so.
The editing choices maybe not so much, but the actual composition and what shots they were able to
camera
get,
pans,
and the camera movements and angles they used, I think were good.
If I'm not mistaken, this whole episode takes place on 3 sets. There's not a lot of differing scenery. This felt like a very small, very self-contained. It was very small. And I'm not sure how many actual sets were built for the specific shots, but what they work with and then the integration of the CGI for certain shots worked really well. It was really good. Yeah. It was very reminiscent, not quite as good as the introduction of Moff Gideon in one of the final episodes of the season 1 of Mandalorian, where we see the E-Web
episode 7.
Yeah, where it just
7 of first
completely rips apart the cantina, and Din Djarin almost dies, and IG-88 sacrifices himself to save all of them. Those couple episodes, not quite on par with some of the shots that were in those, but it definitely felt the most Star Wars of this season so far. That's me. Fair. It did.
Okay. What are you thinking then for a rating?
I'll give it a 7.
7?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. 7 sounds pretty good. Editing.
I'll let you talk for a minute because I want to make sure that I address things without giving spoiler details away.
Right, because we can we'll talk about specific areas later on. But in general, I think the editing, maybe because they had a little less to do, but it was bad in some spots. I was going to say it doesn't stand out as much because they had not as much to do, but that being said, certain sequences weren't edited very well, and part of it is not necessarily so much on the editors as it is what was actually shot in camera.
Yeah.
That just made it hard to actually fix certain scenes and certain sequences. So I can't really fault it too much for the editing. That being said, the editing was nothing groundbreaking. It was good. It was fine. I would happily give it a 7 because it did tie what was able to be captured in camera together very well. However, what was always in the shot suffered at times, but that's not on fault of the editing.
And for me,
in my mind,
I'd give it a 6. It's pretty bad in one spot specifically, and it really it really breaks the narrative, and makes a certain thing that happens much less impactful, because what came before it is about as terrible as watching Obi-Wan walk across a crowded hangar deck of 200 plus people with a tumor under a robe with it was like a Little Rascals parody. It was stupid. It's not that bad, but it was approaching those levels of incompetence. And again, this goes back to my earlier statement about Disney not understanding Star Wars and not caring that they don't understand Star Wars, because they don't see Star Wars fans as being able to articulate their own fandom. They see us as either racists, bigots, or just nasty, hateful, chuds living in our mother's basements with, neck beards, and, we're just miserable human beings that just want to rage about everything on the internet. When the reality is just that we understand our own fandom better than you do, because we kept it alive so that you could swoop in and buy it for $8 billion or however much.
I don't know.
It was an absurd amount of money that was paid to buy it. We know better than you. And I'm not going to pretend that I don't. I do. And this is, it's fiction, people, okay? It's not like we're talking about real-world consequences here, okay? It's just a fictional fandom, all right? Don't get your knickers in a twist too bad. But the fans do know better, and we're being treated as if we are stupid and kind of uneducated in our own fandom, and that bothers me, especially when it comes to talking about this scene, which, again, bringing it back to the editing, is just edited so poorly. And I think it's because... Partly because of the way it was filmed.
Is less on the editing, but I do.
Well, the editing
with the
makes
scene
it
as a
worse.
whole, yes.
The editing makes it worse. The way it was filmed is the issue, which falls directly on Deborah Chow as the director. She chose to film it that way, and what appears on camera is not poorly composed, or there's no booms in shot, or like gaffes from the actors, like the stormtrooper literally collapsing onto the floor from lightly being smacked across the face in the previous episode.
Yeah.
But it was still rough to watch. It was still pretty rough. So 6 for me. I can't give it better than that. That's being generous.
Yeah. I averaged it out because we were only one apart. I gave it 6.5.
Okay, fine.
We'll just go with that.
All right, cool.
That's what I'm going to do. If we're one apart, we're just going to average it, and we'll move on.
All right.
Score and soundtrack. I actually thought the music in this episode...
I agree with you.
...hit so much better than...
It was noticeable. It was actually noticeable.
Yeah.
And it had weight to it, especially when Reva is approaching the front of the stormtrooper garrison, or the is it a...
Yeah, the squadron.
I don't know if it's
led by
a platoon. It was a large number. I don't know how. I don't remember.
I don't know how the Empire...
Squads are usually a group of 6. Platoons are 4 groups of 6. Usually, it's based off of
24.
Yeah, it's based off of Roman military. It's based off Roman military.
2 squads, which might make sense because there's 2 purge troopers along with it. So you would probably have 1 purge trooper with each squad.
Right.
Maybe.
There's roughly 40.
40 to 50 people.
Yeah, 40 or 50 people troopers we see on screen. It's pretty. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to brush up on my lore as far as how the Empire quantifies groups, but I would imagine it's very identical to how the rest of the world does things, which is the Roman standard. Anyway, moving on. The music is really good.
It hit much harder.
Yes.
In all the right ways.
Exactly.
It gave weight to moments that needed weight. It made some of the action feel more intense and exciting at times, and brought the emotion in the scenes where it needed it. It was actually noticeable in a good way.
Yep. I agree. 100%. Music was... I'd give it an 8.
I completely agree.
8 for sure. However, whatever creative decision they chose to just do it differently, keep doing that. It's working.
Yeah,
it's working.
The music part of this episode, good. Keep doing that.
Yeah,
for the whole one episode, but all the next season you do as well. Do that.
Yeah, we're hoping. we're hoping, and
we can be hopeful.
Unfortunately, do not fall into this camp of people that expect better of Disney. I expect them to be the corporate, greedy, just emotionless husks that they are, that see fans as cash cows, with at the same time telling us that we are hateful, racist, bigoted, chuds. So I don't expect them to do better. But for those of you who still have hope,
dream.
For those of you who still are under the delusion of hope, I feel for you. But I hope that your vision becomes a reality. That's all I can say.
All right, moving on to visual effects.
Visual effects. Okay.
This one's kind of... Do we just call it a 6 and move on for now?
Yeah. Yep. We can't talk about it too much without getting into some spoilers, so we're going to skip on that one because there's some pretty intrinsically, like, tied directly to special effects we cannot talk about without giving you spoilers.
Okay, set deck, costuming, and wardrobe. I will defer to you on this just because you know more about Star Wars than I do.
Yep.
So you'll be able to better recognize uniforms, weapons, ships, anything that is not supposed to actually be there.
So, everything looked right. The Stormtrooper armor was right, although I will say that I'm not really sure why they were missing. Usually there's the leader of the group, I should say. Like, we recognize him by, like, the orange pauldron that's on his shoulder.
Right, there should be one of those per squad.
Yeah, I think it's the squad leader, the sergeant, or the lieutenant. However you break it up, typically there's, that's kind of how things work.
I didn't see any of those.
He wasn't, there weren't any present.
We just had the 2 purge troopers.
Yeah,
there.
we just have, like, regular rank and file stormtroopers, which is, okay. I'm just nitpicking, but the cannons were really cool. We've never seen one of those before on screen, where they're like actually like loading in the small charges. Yeah. Although I will say they were far less devastating than I expected them to be for being like mounted like artillery pieces. They kind of hit with all the power of like an E-web, which
they came across a little weak, maybe.
Little weak sauce. And for a guy that has lived the last 10 years trying to blend in, has progressively become more and more and more stereotypical of a Jedi, to where in this episode, the dude bro's just like straight up rocking a Jedi like the sleeveless like punk rock look.
I mentioned this last episode as well, where someone that is trying to like be indiscreet, like trying to blend in presumably and like not stand out. He has consistently just looked like more and more like a Jedi every episode. Like, dude, you're supposed to be blending in.
Yeah. Right. And that was kind of a thing where I just was like, okay, it looked right. I mean, everything, the sleeveless thing was like, okay, I've never seen that before, but not really. Who cares? It's fine. It looked cool.
Sure.
The ships, everything was right. Everything works in this episode. I still think spinning lightsabers is really stupid. The whole like that
I agree.
whole like
I agree.
You can't get me there. I have like a propeller lightsaber.
It's cool, but completely impractical and doesn't make sense.
It worked for General Grievous because he was literally rotating his wrists in like a
a
whirlwind of blades to like push Obi-Wan off the edge. And what do? Like, how do you defend against that? But like a lightsaber that's just like spinning, like however fast it's supposed to be spinning, like we see the Inquisitors like use it to fly in the I'm not kidding, in the Rebels TV show. That was really stupid. I'm glad that's not a thing anymore.
Awful.
That was really dumb. It's like Mary Poppins through the air with a lightsaber. Maybe like 2-year-olds think that's cool, but the vast majority of Star Wars fans watching this think that's lame. Spinning lightsabers, don't get it. I will never understand it. If you like them,
okay,
cool, you do you, but it's a dumb idea that doesn't make any sense. Has no martial application. Like, what are you supposed to like? How are you supposed to use that thing? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, you can't advance with it.
No, and the center is like the weak point. Like, all another like person has to do is like shoot your hand,
or just like, right
or just like poke right through the hole. Like, it's a really stupid design that like is meant to like awe you with its sophistication, and really it just comes across as lazy writing. It's like that one meme I saw where the first time we see Kylo Ren's lightsaber and like the little like 2 like crossguard spikes come out, and then like the following guy has like a even bigger lightsaber, and then one guy like has like a menorah candle holder with like all lightsaber blades on it. It's just really retarded. But
I like Kylo Ren's like Claymore style though.
That was cool, but it just like the progression of like how much more like extra lightsabers go out, and like Rey's like Swiss Army knife lightsaber, and like evil Rey, she's like 2 lightsabers. What's better than 2? 2 that fold. It was just okay now. But aside from that, I didn't notice anything that was like a glaring issue as far as Star Wars props are concerned. This episode was pretty consistent.
So where would you rate it at?
I give it a 9.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Everything looked and felt like Star Wars. as opposed to previous episodes, which I've made my concerns voiced in those.
Yeah,
where
which is why I defer to you, because it's like I don't know enough to recognize something if it was out of place.
Yeah.
Just wouldn't.
And if you think Star Wars fans are bad, you clearly have never been to a convention and met Trekkies. Oh boy.
All right, audio mixing and sound design. The sound design, for the most part, for all the effects and your sabers, your blasters, are all sounds like Star Wars.
Canon sounded weak. They looked the effect of them hitting the door was weak, and the sound of them firing felt weak.
It felt a little shallow.
Yeah.
The impacts of Sith, like you expect like a
Underwhelming.
larger thud and maybe some reverberation
yeah.
from that, but you just don't really get it. Just kind of like boom.
The thing that
weird.
Yeah, what I was thinking of is if you guys remember in the Phantom Menace, the first time we see the droid tanks fire on the energy shield of the Gungan army, the kinetic energy and the sound design for those cannons going off was, you felt the weight of and you could see
Granted,
visually.
this is a smaller cannon in comparison.
Fair enough. But we're talking like in the progression of technology, you would think that they would be able to miniaturize the same kind of force, but even just make it sound like it hits harder.
In Mando season 1,
that thing had some significant heft to it.
Right, more so than this. You are right. I didn't think about that.
Like
before.
The guy just stood there and he's like, pew, and then they like loaded up again, pew. It was, there's no recoil. Like it just hit the door. It was just,
yeah, it didn't feel as impactful as probably should have.
Yeah, that's my only issue with sound design. Otherwise, you're totally right.
The audio mixing, on the other hand, there is one scene where the ADR is bad and noticeable.
Okay.
And
I missed it completely. Okay. But I may have missed it, though, because I was looking at, I think it happens in the scene I'm thinking of. It may have happened because there's so much else going on that I just overlooked it. Okay, I just missed it completely.
You just missed it because you should not have been like, there wasn't other stuff to pay attention to or that was going on. It was just like, nope, that's an ADR line and that was just put in the wrong spot and that person is not saying those words. Just 100%.
Okay.
Just bad.
All right.
But that's about it. Just kind of those two spots. That
give it like
it sounds like Star Wars. Yeah, 7 is kind of what I was thinking, where it's good, it's solid, but, definitely lacking in some areas. Yeah. But 7 is good. Yeah. Definitely good. Overall directing, we don't need to harp too much just yet. Call it a 6 and move on.
Yep.
Overall enjoyment. This, we said at the top of the episode,
That's
this
tough.
is the best episode so far. This was the most enjoyable episode to watch.
I feel like I have to rank it separately. Like I give the first half of the episode.
And here's one of the difficulties that you'll run into with ranking or reviewing episodes of a TV show is that we'll give our series thoughts at the end. Once all episodes have been released, we'll actually recap the whole series and give a series rating for how well we did. So it can get difficult to judge each episode on its own, kind of isolated from everything else, because it does rely on stuff that came before. So just looking at the filmmaking that was used for each episode is the best we can do.
Right.
And I do think this was the strongest episode
by
so
far. By far.
Certainly the most enjoyable one for me.
Hands down.
I would give it an 8 as far as enjoyment. I would watch this one again.
I'd watch it again too. I would watch it again too.
I really enjoyed it.
But again, it's hard. It's difficult. But if I had to give it an overall enjoyment score, I'd probably give it a 7.5. Honestly.
Okay.
Okay. It's definitely the most entertaining, most Star Wars feeling, the most enjoyable episode of the ones we've seen so far, with the least amount of irritating lines. There are no egregiously insulting sequences that are just unbelievable.
7.5, you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's much better. That's just all I can say about it. I could continue to just, continue to riff on the same things I've said before, but that's just at the end of the day. It's serviceable.
Right.
But it is, as compared to what has preceded it, I can't say that it is really making it is not making a significant improvement so far as the improvement from going to unwatchable in some places to now being entertaining.
This episode stands out as being a really enjoyable episode, but in the grand scheme of the show as a whole, it will not do much for raising the enjoyment of the entire experience. I don't think.
Not really. I mean, you're going to get something out of it if you're a Star
You'll
Wars
watch
fan.
just this episode and probably just like the second half of this episode.
For real, though. And you will like it if you are a Star Wars fan. You will.
If you're not.
Even if you're not.
If you're not, you will, like, I'm the normie in this situation. Not love the episode, but certain things this episode.
And I watched it with a friend of
cool.
mine who
Really
I would
good.
consider to be like a secret Star Wars like nerd.
Okay.
And he liked it, but saw the same kinds of issues. And his wife, who is like, in his own words, a basic white girl when it comes to Star Wars, and only watched it so she could understand like the narrative behind like Baby Yoda, I think. Which, if you're watching this, no shade, this is just from
Okay.
it's just how it is. But anyway, but yeah, no, and even she, as a total normie, was like, wait, what? In certain places in the episode, with no context for, not liking what Disney has done from a lore perspective or dissing on fans, anything like that. There are people who will watch this as normies, and you're still going to see things wrong with it, but you will love it. It is good.
So, okay, that brings our rating up to 69.5.
Yeah, that's about what I figured.
Just under 70.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of disappointing in a little bit, just because.
But there are some things that are
things
just
really
so good about this episode. I can't wait to talk about them. I really can't. All right.
Okay, so 69.5, that's where we're at for our rating for episode 5. Now let's jump into
spoiler sections. You've been warned.
Yep.
Dip out now if you haven't seen it. You've been warned. Okay, we're going to go. All right.
Okay, let's cover first.
Agreed.
Some of the things.
Yes, let's hit those things first. Let's start with your ADR issue.
Oh, okay.
And then
so
let's
in
also
the
go off
scene,
the editing as well.
In the
after
scene where Leia is up in the little crawl space, fiddling with the wires and stuff.
I think I remember this, actually.
Her little Lola droid kind of comes out and kind of attacks her a little bit because it has the restraining bolt on it, which now makes them evil.
That's not how restraining bolts work, people. I missed this, actually. Thank you for bringing that up. I will...
It's a little
keep
tiny...
Keep going. I'll talk about that in a minute.
And the line is like, Lola, what are you doing? Then the actress, not her fault, clearly is not saying that in the scene. And they just like needed to put dialogue back in there over it, and they just ADR'd that scene, and it's super noticeable.
Yeah.
And it really takes you out of it. It's like, oh, that sucks. Like that's just not good. Like, that's not good. That is poor sound design, poor editing choices.
Lazy.
Just not good right there. Yeah. What were you going to add in?
Restraining bolts don't work that way. They do exactly what they sound like.
I'm assuming it was a restraining bolt.
It was. She literally says, it's a restraining bolt. And she, pulls it right off the wing. Like, okay, there's several spots in Star Wars that we see restraining bolts in effect. It does exactly what it sounds like. It keeps a droid from accessing certain parts of its functions.
It keeps them submissive, basically, right?
Yeah, they turn into basically compliant slaves.
It's what Jabba uses on his droids.
It is. We see one on C-3PO's chest, but the first time we see one is on R2-D2, when Luke Skywalker puts one on R2-D2 because the droid literally is just a thug, rebel, won't do what it's told, has his own plan, and that's what makes R2-D2 awesome, is because for a droid that has no dialogue, he's one of the most expressive characters of the entire franchise.
R2-D2, main character of the entire series.
For real. Anyway, when R2-D2 pops off the... I'm so sorry. It wasn't Luke that put it on R2-D2. It was the Jawas, because they were trying to keep him from escaping, because they pick him up, they shock them with the ion blasters, put them on the ship, and then hawk them for money. And so when Luke pops off the restraining bolt, R2 immediately gets access to his projector and is able to play the message that he selectively edits to get Luke to basically be intrigued, to get him to go look for Ben Kenobi, because the droid is like playing 4D chess at this point. But
yeah, because R2 literally knows everything.
For real. And is the architect of like the entire first movie. Amazing writing. But that's what restraining bolts do. They either prevent droids from being able to do certain things, or they will actually physically shut them down if they try to violate that programming. They don't make them evil. You know what does that? Reprogramming them. And you know what doesn't change reprogramming?
Removing
flicking a restraining bolt. If anything, that would let the droid access more functions that would turn into like a psycho killer droid. Anyway, Disney, please, just hire a fan who knows these things, because whoever you are hiring to write these things, they suck at their job, and they are obviously sucking at their job to the point where it doesn't make sense to even normal people. But that is just that. I'm going to let it go at this point.
Made enough nonsense for me to catch it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was the first thing.
The ADR line with Leia in that scene, it's bad.
Yeah. Leading up to that, though, we'll get this out of the way. Leia doesn't do a whole lot in this episode, which is fine. Like, not every character is going to have a whole lot to do every episode. But her, like, few lines that she does have, I kind of feel bad for the actress.
They're making her really
her first line
and unlikable.
Is bad. Like, because they're talking about, Obi-Wan makes the I think it's Obi-Wan that makes the comment. Or
he does.
Tala that makes the comment to Roken about, like, going up and, like...
He does. Obi-Wan basically says, like, somebody's going to have to go up there and try to fix it.
Right, because that's what a logical person would do. That's why you have, like, the little hatch that allows you to get in there.
Which also presupposes that, like, there's mechanics that will become relevant in the next couple of minutes.
Knows what they're doing. And, Leia makes the comment. She just says, I'm going to need a ladder.
She's 10 years old.
I don't have a problem with her being the one that goes up to do it.
No.
That can be fine.
How is she just...
Her line is annoying. Like, she just is increasingly more annoying.
I'm going to need a ladder because I'm going to fix this. And like, she's 10 years old.
All she has to say before I need a ladder is...
I can do it.
Because they're talking about Roken's like, well, I can't fit up there, so I'm not going to crawl up there.
Right.
All she has to do is say, like, I can do it.
Small for
I'm going to need a ladder.
For real. That's all she had to say.
And that fixes the whole line.
Legitimately. All she had to say was, I can do it. Just be the little kid that wants to be a part of what's going on.
Yeah, I can do it. I'm going to need a ladder. Boom. Fixed it. Easy.
Right.
Stop writing her so annoying. Stop making her so annoying.
They're trying to sell Leia like this, like, 10-year-old genius, amazing, just... do it all in one, like a Swiss Army knife with legs, and it's not working. First of all, because she's grown up her whole life on Alderaan. Okay, she's a diplomat by profession. Even if you want to talk about the so-called, like, PhD by 18 thing, which I think is part of Disney's canon, because I don't remember that being a part of the old canon. She's 10 at this point, though. She's 10 years old, people. I don't care if she is a genius. She's never been around any kind of garage-level mechanics, even though she is Anakin's daughter. It's not by osmosis you just become... proficient at fixing crap. That's not how it works. You only get that way by doing the thing. And if you are good at it, genetics can help with that. But she's just being sold to us like she's just perfect.
Yeah.
And it's not working.
And it would only, again, take just that one little small change in dialogue to make her come across as someone that is not just an annoying know-it-all, but someone that wants to help.
And more importantly, a pretentious 10-year-old that's communicating to adults like an adult. First of all, I don't know about y'all, but again...
I don't even know if she's talking like an adult, because an adult wouldn't talk like that.
Well, that's a good point, actually.
It's just bad.
Like,
it's
even
not
if an
trying
adult
to write her
came off,
as an adult, it's just bad.
Well, even as an adult came off that way to another adult, you're right, it would be... like, oh, okay.
It would probably be received a little better,
but
from
not by
adult
much.
Character,
it's still pretty,
but it
pretty
still comes off as pretentious.
Very much so. And it's worse because my biggest issue with this is not because Leia is a girl. Just people tend to, like, point this out. They're like, you just hate women. No, it's because kids act like kids, and I get that you want to make Leia a bigger deal because there is no getting around this. Disney is pro-feminist. That is just how it is. That's why Reva is such a big deal in this show. And that's why Leia is such a big deal in the show, because we can't look at Luke, because Luke was the hero of the original trilogy, and they character assassinated him in Last Jedi, whether you agree with that or not. That's how it worked. So they can't show successful, strong, young male characters who are going to turn into strong, successful, flawed, but successful heroes of the franchise. You need to show Leia, because she is the underdeveloped character, even though anybody with 2 brain cells to rub together would know that if you watch the original trilogy, she has so much to do with what happens and is, pardon my French, a badass in those movies. She's awesome in those movies, even though she's very pretentious in them as well, but she learns to not...
in the first one.
She learns to not be, though, because basically everyone's like, you suck to hang out with.
She has to start dealing with people.
Yeah, and everyone's like, you are really insufferable to be around, essentially. Like, Empire Strikes Back is one of the best movies for relationships developed for just in a romance situation where two people that couldn't be more different end up falling for each other because of just the difference. It works great. Anyway, you're trying to convince me, I'm a viewer, you're trying to convince me that this 10-year-old little girl is somehow more capable of fixing said problem, not because of her size, which would qualify her to fit up there, but she doesn't even say, there's no mention from dialogue of other characters that are like, hey, you know, like, here's an earpiece, I'll walk you through it. She just, I need a ladder. And then the dude's like, I don't have time for you, child. And then Obi-Wan's like, I trust her, so you should too. Get her a ladder. And it was... it was dumb. It was just really dumb. And the only reason it was there was to service that feminist moment. That's all. The only reason it was there.
And then when she fixes the door thing, fixing things in Star Wars has never made sense.
That's because it's not true science fiction. You don't need an explanation. You just push the button and it works.
Right. So it's not at fault of, like... It's not out of character for the universe of Star Wars for fixing things to not make sense.
They've never explained how things work. They just do.
Because, right, you just, like, take a screwdriver-looking thing and you twist it a few times and then it works.
Yeah, I will say...
Star Wars has always fixed
as far as a prop, that was a pretty freaking lazy prop. That legit looked like a screwdriver with one of the Phillips, like, hex heads missing. Like...
It looked like it was just like a flat, like just a screwdriver, but with flat top, like no actual. Like I use those at work sometimes. Right. I need like crank on something.
Well, like they didn't even bother to like put a hydro spanner, which is like we literally see Han Solo's got an entire toolbox full of Star Wars tools that are like named specifically.
Anyway,
my point being, some dude just pulled a screwdriver and like lopped the tip off, and here you go.
My point being though is that fixing things not making sense is not like isolated to this scenario. All of Star Wars has that issue.
But they're always consistent though. That's the thing, is if you're going to do that, you have to be consistent with the rules of how the things work. As long as you push that same button and it does the same thing, I don't need to know how it works. I just need to know that it does.
Fair enough. As long as there is consistency with your made up BS. Cool. At least
as long as the laws of your universe are consistent, I don't need to understand how they work.
Fair.
That's fantasy versus fiction.
Fair
We'll talk about that soon.
Fair enough.
Anyway.
What do you want to talk about next?
I want to get right into the Go ahead.
Before we do that, then, am I the only one that's getting tired of Ewan McGregor acting like Obi-Wan?
You mean like he's explained that a little bit, like flesh it out? Because I have beef with how he's doing it, but maybe for different reasons.
Where I noticed this watching this episode, and it's just like, man, every line that Ewan McGregor delivers sounds like somebody is really trying to get him to sound like Alec Guinness. It's like that weird off British accent that people kind of had in the first in A New Hope, in the first Star Wars movie, where Leia kind of had that weird British accent that she then lost in the latter films because that was a bad choice. George shouldn't have done that. Are they doing that with Ewan? Like, I realize he's from the UK. I get that that's his accent, but it's like he
has more of a Scottish.
He's being directed to sound as much
like Alec Guinness as possible.
Obi-Wan is supposed to, where in the moments where he has to raise his voice or has any kind of emotion behind it when he's talking with Anakin in the flashback with their sparring match, or when he's talking to Reva through the door, or some of those other scenes where it comes across more genuine and he has a more natural cadence to how he speaks,
and he sounds like Obi-Wan, and I want him to sound like Ewan McGregor's
all
Obi-Wan.
The other times he sounds like the inflections in his voice are just so forced with where they want to put things. It comes across so weird.
Okay.
And I'm tired of it.
That's
what I mean. I'm tired of Ewan McGregor
as much.
Maybe I'm the only one. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm wrong.
To be fair, I've kind of checked out as far as the dialogue is concerned. Like, I could care less what they're saying.
But that's one thing that bothered me, where it's just like, I'm tired of Ewan McGregor trying to act like how I'm assuming he was being directed to act like Obi-Wan instead of just being Obi-Wan.
Fair.
Is what it felt like. It felt like he was trying to be that character.
Trying to be Obi-Wan rather than just doing his version of Obi-Wan,
right.
which what we all came to watch.
In the moments where there's more emotion behind what he's saying in certain parts of the show have all worked really well.
Yeah, for sure.
But for the rest of it, if you go back and watch, like, it's the exact same cadence and tone and how he speaks just all the time, and not in that somewhat, so uncivilized way that we remember him speaking. It's I don't know.
He's trying to put a spin on it to sound like an older Obi-Wan,
it's just not working. I don't like it.
All right. Well, should we talk about probably the worst part of the episode then?
Yeah.
At least. All right.
And then we'll save the good stuff for last, because there is good stuff to talk about.
There are good, and we will give it credit for being awesome, because it is. This
bad
part
section.
we're going to have to get this out of the way first, because people, it's bad.
Yeah. Go for it.
All right, cool. So we see Riva. I think it's Reva. I keep wanting to say Reva.
I don't know which one it's actually supposed to be, because they never said it, which makes it difficult.
Right. So Reva, basically, and a garrison of stormtroopers, about 50 that we talked about earlier, they basically track the path and Obi-Wan and this group of people to this planet. I assume that it's Jabin or...
Yeah, they're on Jabin.
Okay. However you say that. Planet names are so dumb.
J-A-B-I-I-M, right? Jabin?
I think so. I missed it a couple times, and the British accents are kind of throwing me. But anyway, they track them there. They basically, we saw that the Lola bot basically she's gonna be a little traitor.
Yep.
Locks the hangar bay doors so they can't escape, because Star Destroyer comes into orbit. They're like, oh, we're screwed. And then what we talked about earlier, where Leia just elects herself chief engineer and decides to fix the doors. But following that, there's a little bit of a battle. But basically, Obi-Wan says, we're going to basically convince them that we are going to hold this, basically, and we're just going to fight for every inch of ground. And then by the time they get...
Yeah, we just have to hold off long enough so that by the time they actually get in the facility, we've opened up the door and we've escaped.
We'll just take off.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So they're gonna make a really hodgepodge mix of defensive positions and try to hold this door that is keeping the cave that they're in from being breached by the garrison out front, along with Reva. And I should mention too, one of the absolute just most amazing gifts that we have seen so far is getting to watch Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor duel as Anakin and Obi-Wan in a temple training sequence.
Yeah.
And it just narrates the meta narrative throughout the entire episode
100%.
where they are dueling at sparring match, essentially, and we get to see how Obi-Wan and Anakin, just that interaction between master and apprentice that, we remember from when we were kids, and it's magic. Although they really should have made Hayden Christensen look less like he was 40 and more like he was 20.
Yeah,
those
that's one
age
of
lines,
the,
bro.
The special effects parts where it's just like,
come on,
with
man.
makeup and CG, you probably could have done a little bit better.
Yeah, those age lines are pretty obvious.
Yeah,
but
the de-aging, if there was any, was not great.
No. So that's running throughout the course of this, and it becomes a much bigger point where they just tie everything together in a beautiful package.
Yeah, with the different attack and defense patterns that Obi-Wan and Anakin have over the course of this duel that is just edited throughout the episode very well.
The pacing matches the beats of the episode perfectly.
Kind of the different
so we see
the chess battle that Obi-Wan and Kenobi are playing in their minds with the tactics of how they're going about this large-scale fight being played out in their sparring match.
Right, you hear Obi-Wan basically telling people that Anakin is a single-minded opponent, and he basically says, once the hangar doors have closed, they go, okay, well, they're probably not going to, go for it right away, and he's like, yeah, they're coming right now.
Yeah,
and
he's going to attack. He has no patience for a siege.
Right, and because having literally gone through a decade of the Clone Wars with Anakin on countless battles, he knows the playbook of how his mental process works, and how his tactics as a general, the most successful general of the Clone Wars era, to the point where the 501st was the most legendary group of clones under any other commander. Like Anakin and the 501st were a legend. So that being said, they are going to breach this door. Reva she walks up to the door and senses Obi-Wan on the other side of it, I assume.
Well, Obi-Wan actually tells them to tell the troopers and Reva outside that he wants to talk. Like, they're firing at the door, and it's like, he wants to talk to Reva.
So she walks up to the door. She walks up to the door. He's on the other side of it, and then they can talk through what is like solid steel. Okay.
Or maybe they're communicating by the Force.
Cool, it's Force whispering. Whatever. They're having like this conversation, and Reva...
I really like this moment between them.
There's a couple issues, though, and I'll point them out
Go for it.
briefly. So, Reva basically admits, like pretty much we saw us coming a mile away, that she was one of the apprentices that was supposedly butchered and left to die in the temple.
She was a Padawan at the... she was a young
the night of Order
she was
66.
At the temple.
She was confronted by Anakin, and her friends were slaughtered. She says that she hid amongst the bodies to... Because basically Obi-Wan says, like, there's no way you could have known that Anakin was Darth Vader because you were too young, and you weren't there unless you were, and you were at the temple when Anakin killed all of the younglings and the other Jedi.
Which I appreciate the confirmation of the backstory.
Yes.
Like, fleshing things out.
Yes, and it gives it gives an absolute believable... reason for her being just angry and insufferable all the time to everyone around her, to where she is like the most unlikable like teammate from like just she's got like no synergy with these people, and it becomes very obvious because she admits that she is basically only there to find a way to kill Anakin for what he did to her, supposedly leaving her to die. We don't know if he actually stabbed her or not. I think that he did.
Probably.
But that being said, the stormtroopers are like 6 feet away, and they're just like
15.
They're like a present party though to this whole conversation.
But they're Force whispering.
Yeah, Force whispering. Remember that. So she's just basically admitting that she's like a double agent, essentially. She's only serving the Empire to kill
to be
Darth
fair,
Vader.
She doesn't actually admit it, and she doesn't say anything that would be incriminating.
Not in those exact words, but to anybody that was listening, the audience we were, that is what she said.
Yes.
And Obi-Wan basically says, you're only here to kill Anakin, basically. And they have a moment where he says that, you know, he can help her, and then she straight up calls him on it. She's like, you can't kill him. There's no way you could kill him.
Well, she says, are you sure you want to?
Yeah, that's what she says. Are you sure you even want to? And Obi-Wan, obviously, doesn't want to.
Yeah. It's like he didn't
kill Anakin when he had the chance anyway. No. He left him to die, but he didn't kill him. He couldn't bring himself to do it. So Reva's totally right in that instance, and she makes this little speech about not needing anybody's help for any reason.
It's not a speech.
It's a like a 5 to 10 second monologue.
It's
in reply to his statement.
He says something. She says something. He says something. She says
But
something.
it broke the flow of the conversation for me anyway, where she made this statement where it was like, I don't need anybody's help. I don't need you.
It doesn't break the flow of anything. All she does is says, I don't need anyone.
Right. But it was just like...
I'm pretty sure it's that exact line. It's not long. It doesn't take... It's just, I don't need anyone.
I'd have to watch it again. I'd have to watch it again to be sure.
Hasn't needed anyone because she's gotten everywhere on her own. And then I forget what Obi-Wan says in reply.
It bites her in the butt anyway. But... it was just kind of like, I didn't really get why they put that in there. I get that for the character,
I think Obi-Wan then says, like, you don't have to do it alone.
Yes, that's true.
And then her reply is, you have no idea what I've had to do alone, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But it's not a completely out of the nowhere, just, like, speech about how she doesn't need anyone. Like, she's just replying directly to
this is one of those things
Obi-Wan is saying.
I can't unsee some of the things that I know Disney is currently pushing, and it smacks of just very subliminal
There you go.
feminism, where you cannot have, and this is something that filmmakers have admitted to for a long time, you cannot have female characters in movies that are only there to either talk about men amongst themselves or only able to progress in their plots with the direct help or assistance of a male character, which is not, that's a pretty ridiculous statement in and of itself, because that would be silly. That would be a ridiculous plot line. If you basically just subjected somebody to their most basic element, their gender, and then said, I am going to literally structure the plot line around you being either a man or a woman, and you're either able or not able as a consequence. That's stupid. No good story is written that way. There's just not. That the whole reason that exists, and I don't remember the name of the actual comic strip, but it was a gag, actually. It was a comic reel gag. And it's a rule, actually, where what I just talked about, where you basically, if you're going to have two women on screen, they either have to talk about something other than the men or their dating lives or something, which is ridiculous because nobody would care anyway. And it's a joke, people. Anyway, the only reason that I bring this up is because why it broke it for me is because she makes that statement about you have no idea the things I've had to do alone. Okay, cool, that's believable. I don't get why you can't just say no. I don't need your help. Out of a spiteful hatred of what Obi-Wan is. You could have just said that. You didn't really need to add the part about I've done everything on my own. You know what? So is pretty much everybody else. You're not special. That just, I don't... I didn't get it.
I didn't bump into it as much as you did, clearly.
That's fine. But in any case, this is where I couldn't talk about it in the previous section, but kind of about the special effects here and Star Wars in general. Again, Disney doesn't understand how lightsabers work because we know exactly how difficult it is to cut through a blast door. We've seen it multiple times in the Clone Wars series and in film, live action, in the Phantom Menace. It takes Qui-Gon like 10 minutes to burn through this blast door, double shielded, because they closed the second inner doors to keep him from being able to cut through it.
Might be why it took longer, because this
for
one
sure,
was
for sure,
only
because
one.
we see him actually starting to drag through it, but he's dragging through it with force, and it's taking time. We see Reva on the edge of her statement to Obi-Wan at the very end about not needing people's help. She just rips through that door with her lightsaber at Mach 1. Like, she just sticks that crap in and just drags it down, and whoosh, they just open.
The way it playing out read to me was that she sparks up the saber into the door.
Right, but the speed at which she drags it through the cross beams, all of the interlocking mechanisms, that crap must have been made out of like paper mache, because that lightsaber blitzed through it like it wasn't even there. And all I can imagine is that she's just got a super saber, because they spin and do cool tricks, so they must be super hot as well. Disney, you need to figure out like which version of lightsabers you want to go with. The one where kyber crystals are in everything, because that makes sense. Regardless of the fact that kyber crystals they were from the unofficial sequel to the movie that never was, called Splinter of the Mind's Eye, and it was a single crystal, and it was special, and it was actually force sensitive, and it was sentient, and there's great book, by the way, go read it. Anyway, I could riff on that forever, but...
So, can lightsabers cut through blast doors, or do lightsabers bounce off of stormtroopers?
Yeah,
Which one is it?
That's a good point, because, like I brought up previously,
In the last
Obi-Wan,
episode.
has to double tap the stormtroopers, like, oh, I missed, or, like, I'm too weak, I can't cut through it. And it's like he just, like, bounced off the guy's pec armor and then has to, like, hit him again. And then we see Reva's lightsaber just shred this door like it's nothing.
Like, the reason is because Disney doesn't go in for dismemberment by lightsabers. Like,
They cut a dude in half, like he fell on...
the lightsaber.
That's true.
Someone didn't actually do it. It was
They took
an
a hand off,
environmental
though,
kill.
but they
environmental kill.
Ah,
you
fair.
can't kill somebody by dismembering them in Disney films.
Fine,
Like, you just can't do
that's
that.
probably...
That
probably
is the
puts it over
legitimate reason why
the
things
PG-13
are like
rating.
that. Is that, yeah.
But still, though, like...
But it creates an in-universe inconsistency that is just annoying.
Like, have Obi-Wan, like, stab the stormtrooper, or, like, just slice through. That's all you gotta do, people. Like, the way that it is in Jedi Fallen Order, which, lightsaber physics notwithstanding, at least in that game, you don't have to, like, smash them like it's a foam noodle. It's kind of...
Unless you're fighting a purge trooper.
Yeah, okay, fine. But anyway, that was just my beef with that, and then it gets real.
The hallway scene.
The hallway scene.
The bad one.
The bad one, yep. All that before kind of pales in comparison to some absolutely garbage tier filming. Really bad.
Take it away.
Okay, so this giant group of stormtroopers, we've got about 50 of them, right? They're just rank and file soldiers. I will say, like I said in the previous episode, stormtroopers, Disney stormtroopers, a little bit more intimidating. They actually have, like, they've got some tactics to them. Like, they march in file. They
Sure.
shoot like trained soldiers would. They don't behave that way in this scene. So when the doors open up, all of the ragtag group of people who are running for their lives basically start shooting back. And when the doors whoosh open, basically, Obi-Wan ignites his lightsaber, and they just go ham. Two things that immediately stood out to me as being major problems. The, like, artillery pieces don't fire. they don't immediately open up on the group of people that they could just wipe out with
I didn't even think about that.
4 blasts.
They got this big old cannon sitting there, and they don't use it.
They're like, you know, it'd be more impressive. Get the stormtroopers in there.
Yeah.
It's like, but
if
what about
we
the
just like missed every shot?
Yeah,
except for 2.
Exactly. So the artillery cannons, they forget those are there.
Go ahead.
They just forget they're there. They just cease to exist. They ran out of ammo on their crappy attempt to try to open the door, and so they don't use them anymore. I'm giving you an out, Disney. It's a lazy one, but there you go. So basically, the stormtroopers charge in. And they march forward like a civil war. They don't crouch. They don't like try to like break up into formations to like cross the lanes and try to like break the line of concentration. So you have to pick a target on an angle. So you can't just like focus and like pick targets in a much narrower field of view. Mm-hmm. They just march forward like droids. And then they get within like 10 feet of people and are missing their shots.
And up to this point, nobody's died.
No one has died. And none of the people inside the room have died, and they are just literally standing in the open.
To be fair, there is one of the rebel dudes that has a shield. He's hiding behind something.
He's got a freaking like trash can door that he's like hiding behind. That was at least the first. That was
He's
believable.
got something.
Yeah,
he's got something.
He's like, I got a shield. So that part at least made sense. But none of these stormtroopers hit anything. Never you mind that they would have just eviscerated that room in under 30 seconds. They would have all been gone.
Could make the argument that perhaps up to half of the bolts that are being fired into the room are being blocked by Obi-Wan.
That's okay. That's possible. But we also see that he's not at his A game, and he's very slow.
Clearly not blocking everything. Like I said, at most 50% of the shots he is able to deflect.
So the stormtroopers get into the room, and all hell breaks loose. They start running back into the hallway, and then we just see
it's your classic firefight with lots of shooting and nobody dying. Some of the stormtroopers
It's like an A-Team episode where like there are hundreds of rounds fired and nobody gets hit. Nobody. Yeah. To the point where like one dude has a bowcaster.
Roken has a bowcaster.
Roken has a bowcaster. He fires it like once and then pulls his sidearm.
Yeah, it was weird.
And then like you see people like running across other lanes of fire, and there is no consistency. It's like nobody in that room understands how. They never even played paintball before. 3
of the rebels died over the course of this entire sequence.
Yeah, a whopping 3.
And one of them is a robot.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and he gets missed like 3/4 of the times that he's even shot at. But like either all the weapons in Star Wars that are not lightsabers are made with the worst accuracy in the universe, or people have plot armor. But the other thing that is the most egregious sin that I wanted to bring up that actually my friend's wife brought up that I missed completely. In the edits back and forth between when you see the doors open and the firefight start to when you see Reva start to advance, you see stormtroopers at the back of the group firing. You see the little like red reflections as they're firing their blasters, like maybe like in between the guys that are in front of them. That's really, 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 really stupid.
Yeah, I missed that, but yeah, that is really dumb. You would not do that.
No, you literally just mow down the entire like first group of guys into the room. Like that. I don't even need to explain it. That's just dumb. And then when they edit to Reva walking through them, they're not shooting. They shouldn't be. They're the rear guard. They're there to take up the slack if the guys up front get shot and killed. That's how it works. That's not what we see. We kind of see some rough edits where the guys at the back, at least a few of them, are shooting, and then they edit to them and they're not shooting. But then it gets even worse. So they're in the tunnel, and we're seeing stormtroopers within like 3 feet sometimes of the rebels they're shooting at, and it's like kids like, pow, I got you, pow, pow, I missed, pow, I got you. It's like that pathetic. And then the droid that doesn't speak gets shot a bunch of times, missed a bunch of times. Yeah. He goes down, and then we see Tala get shot right in the gut, and she goes down, and that I was like, oh man, that sucked. And the music picked up right at that point. But everything preceding that made that death cheap because it was just so poorly edited and choreographed in that sequence that when she died, it just felt cheap.
You know, while the loader bot was kind of taking the fire, essentially, he like drops down in front of Tala to kind of protect her because he's already dying. Obi-Wan could have just like pulled Tala to the door. Yep. He's literally like, and he's screaming her name. He's clearly getting something because he's like force pushes Reva back like a good like 30 feet. Like he's like clearly stepping it up and is much more capable. Like he could have
Oh, he so easily could have just
pulled
yanked her across the room with no trouble. And he's fighting 2 stormtroopers. And we saw him take down 2 whole squads from 2 opposite directions in that hallway. You cannot sell me on the fact that this was just bad writing. And he's like yelling her name while he's like kind of play fighting with the stormtrooper in front of him. And then this other dude just like bonsai charges him. It's like... Nothing about it made sense.
He does end up killing both of them.
Right, but it just...
But then, yeah.
It's just like 1-2. Even if it bounces off his armor, 1-2. This guy's down. Force push that dude into the wall and then yank Tala over. The only reason she died right there is because they needed some emotional weight. Somebody needed to die in that hallway scene to sell it. Otherwise, it was just stupid.
Yeah.
Got to see a thermal detonator, though.
To be fair, Obi-Wan using that Force push was the first time we've seen him use anything.
Right, it's true. Apparently, they have cooldowns now. Apparently, there's game physics in Star Wars, because once you use the Force, it's like, I gotta wait 30 seconds. Sorry.
I also made a note about when the robot died. It's like, okay, this is a thing that exists in Star Wars now. And every Star Wars thing that is released, you have to have an emotional droid death.
Yep. Gotta care about the droids.
I don't know when that started. I'm not mad at it necessarily. It's a thing.
Yeah, it is absolutely a thing where we care about droids because we like...
But we do care about droids.
We do.
Like, we do.
And more importantly, it's because droids are given personalities in Star Wars. They're not in other science fiction universes. And it's cool. It's
like when K2 died. Like,
yeah.
Come on. That's an emotional death.
They have personality and you care.
It helps that it's Alan Tudyk, so...
It does. But seriously, though, the first thing I thought about, I was going to bring this up, thank you for bringing that up, is that in Rogue One, when K2 walks into that room, he's just like, bam, 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 and everybody just drops. There's like 6 stormtroopers in there, 2 Navy officers, and like 3 or 4 regular stormtroopers.
To be fair,
they drop.
The programming on K2 is much different than whatever this one is.
Fine. You can make that argument, but the thing that I was trying to draw attention to with this comparison is that plot armor is probably one of the worst excuses for just bad writing in general. When you talk about a sequence where there should be a firefight, you should see people like in A New Hope when all of the rebel soldiers are lined up on either side of the hallway and they just get absolutely just messed up when the stormtroopers come through the door. Like 3 stormtroopers drop and then the rest of them flood into the room and wipe out all the rebels. That's how it should have played out. It should have been impactful, it should have meant something, and you should have seen people dropping. Stormtroopers and these other people. But in fact, we see like 1, maybe 2 dudes drop the rebels.
Right, the droid dies, and then 2 Tala dies, and then 1 other rebel character.
So apparently normal people are just like aces with anything. Like they could throw rocks and be more effective than stormtroopers.
I did find it odd, though, that Tala chose to hold the thermal detonator rather than
I think she had a dead man switch on it. So like when she let go of the button, it blew up. Like just in case like she died while holding it, like it would still go off.
Okay. That
I don't know if that's the thing, but still though, seriously, like she could have just like lobbed it. Anything would have made more sense than like maybe she could have like thrown it and Obi-Wan could have like pushed it down the hallway and it would have like collapsed. There's so many better ways this could have gone, but this is where the bad part is over. And it gets really good from this point forward.
So then Obi-Wan surrenders.
Yes. Because at this point, the dialogue and the fight...
The sparring match
has still kept going in flashback sequences. Yep. And at this point, Anakin has the upper hand in the fight. And Obi-Wan is talking about how Anakin gets tunnel vision and only sees the victory. He can't see anything else or even another way to win aside from just brute force.
Yeah.
And so he chooses to surrender in order to draw Anakin out, to give Reva a chance to be able to kill Anakin.
Yeah.
Brilliant move. Actually, like a really good move.
And I like the fact that Obi-Wan was never going to go through with it.
No, he straight up used her like a pawn.
100%, which I enjoy because it's like, no, he surrenders.
He knew she didn't have a chance against Vader, but he knew that if he
he's
was
able
able
to focus on me, and then you can just do the jump in and do the thing and kill him, and he has no intention of sticking around.
It was savage. It was straight savage because Obi-Wan basically was like, "You're gonna die, and I have to sacrifice you to get the rest of these people out."
And he knows it.
Yep.
And because then, the stormtroopers take him back inside to hold him there until Vader gets here, and he just straight up kills them
again,
and gets away because
lending even more credence to the whole like yelling at Tala while he's battling one stormtrooper. He literally just like boom, boom. We see the lightsaber come on, and then we hear two bodies drop.
Yeah,
like it's
Obi-Wan
that fast.
just like all of a sudden like getting out of the bonds and killing two troopers. Like you don't have to show that to me. I know how he did it.
Right.
Because he's Obi-Wan. We know what he can do.
But we need to see him like struggling to cut down two stormtroopers in order to give dramatic effect to Tala dying.
Right.
Inconsistencies, but whatever.
Yeah.
We see the best part. Vader shows up, and he is just on a mission, and he just cuts right through to the tunnel, goes through it, gets to the very end, and we see the rebel ship taking off in one of the best, if not the best, use of the Force I've ever seen in a single film, with no exception aside from The Force Unleashed. He grabs that ship and just straight up yanks it into the ground.
Yeah.
And it is amazing. Doesn't struggle, doesn't like, breathe heavy as he like brings it down slowly. No, like one-handed just grips it and just chucks it onto the ground and then like rips an entire like section of it off. And it was like, damn! It was impressive. It was so impressive. And then he sees the other rebel ship take off behind it. Yeah. This is where, again, kind of we couldn't talk about it before. We both agree that there were not two ships in several scenes in that hangar bay. There was one. Then it shows two.
But I do remember seeing multiple ships in that hangar at some point.
And maybe it's just that the footage that showed both got cut for some reason because they needed to like have the second ship taking off be cooler somehow because Vader yanking the first one down and blowing it apart with the Force wasn't cool enough.
I definitely remember seeing two ships in the hangar at some point, but there is also for sure only one ship in the scene where we see it take off. The second ship is not there.
No.
So there's just inconsistencies there, probably just for dramatic effect.
Right. But I think it's
still a noticeable inconsistency.
Yep.
But Vader just yanking the transport back down to the ground and just ripping the walls off of it to try
and not
to get
like
inside.
slowly or like it doesn't like come apart in pieces. Like it disintegrates under the Force.
The descent is not quite as extreme
until the very end. Like he grabs it
and then grabs it and stops it. And he's like, okay, I got it.
And then boom, and then it just hits the ground. Yeah. And then when the side comes off, though, like that crap flew across the room like it was shot out of a cannon. Yeah. It was impressive.
No, it looked like it was like a shotgun blast impact on a cardboard box.
Yeah.
Like just
explosive power. And I mean, this is exactly what Star Wars fans have been waiting to see from the Darth Vader that we continually hear like just talked up within lore as being like the scariest thing to ever walk the earth.
I buy it.
This is why. And we get to see it. It's cool. So cool. So cool. Thank you, whoever wrote that. Thank you. So cool. But after that...
Right, the ship takes off, and then Reva
walks up behind. Why she didn't just, like, turn on the lightsaber as she's stabbing? Not really sure. She, like, turns it on, yells, and then tries to, like, cut him down. It's like, I'm going to advertise to give you a fighting chance. And then comes after him. And we see one of
these... It was a little awkward, that part.
But the following fight makes you forget that ever happened because this is the best, by far, use of just overwhelming power I have ever seen. We get to see Darth Vader just punk Reva in... It's not even a contest. It's not a battle. It's just a child.
Never had a chance.
Swinging a stick at a guy who has spent his entire life with a lightsaber in one hand and armies at his command by the time he was like 19 years old. And it shows so clearly that he is so far and above anything she could ever hope to be.
Never takes out his lightsaber.
He never does. He just like dances around it, takes hers from her, breaks it in half, gives her the other half.
Like, go ahead, pick it up.
Yeah, try it. Let's go. And then she just continues to come at him, and he just...
Because at this point, she like you have to.
Yeah.
Like
You're committed.
Stop.
You can't bail.
Yeah.
And she just goes for it, and... Oh, man. The choreography in this fight is just so good. And we see the classic Darth Vader-style combat where he's just using one-armed, just brute strength attacks. And he's just overwhelming everything she does. And then he finally ends up just ripping the other lightsaber from her and running her through. And this is where I'm not sure if it was done to kind of give like weight to the scene that we saw before where she was an apprentice and she saw Anakin slaughtering all the other younglings. Did she or did she not get stabbed? I'm not sure. I would say yes, because in the vision she kind of like fades out and falls over at the same time that she fades out and falls over in the real world as well.
So we're talking about whether or not she got stabbed as a youngling in the Jedi Temple. I would agree with you. I would lean towards yes.
Because she says she hid amongst the bodies, and then we also hear the Grand Inquisitor say that they found her basically living like a street rat. So Reva is the only person, aside from Darth Maul, to survive. No, she is the only example, I think, of a Star Wars character who, because she will survive. She doesn't even she's not even fazed by it. She gets freaking run through, clearly doesn't have a spine or internal organs to get fried.
The Grand Inquisitor.
I think there's a different explanation for that. I don't think that... Yes, I do. I think that he might be a clone. I don't think he's actually the same person.
Interesting.
Because he clearly died. That dude got run through and he dropped dead. At least we think he did. We didn't, see him, drag himself away or anything.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. But Reva, straight up gets stabbed by Vader, drags herself over on the floor to the little, broken comm link that Obi-Wan dropped, which just so happens to have...
dropped.
Huh?
Haja dropped it.
Haja dropped it, yeah. Haja's back. He's awesome.
Love Camille.
He's really funny. But, anyway, the little, projector comlink thing. It's not a comlink, but it's like a video projector for messages. It's a pager, Star Wars pager.
Sure.
Basically is all broken because it got crushed somehow, and she manages to catch magically the last 6 seconds of Bail Organa's message, which the guy's the worst spy ever because he's
he's the politician.
But he's advertising the fact that oh, you know those 2 kids that we saved from the supreme ruler of the galaxy? Yeah, did you find the other one? Because I have the other one here. Should I go back to where the other one's hidden? And she catches...
To be fair, he's speaking to Obi-Wan.
Right, but still, why is he even bothering to say anything?
Because they both heard from him in a long time.
But they both know it's you could just use a code or something. It's sequel bait. It's only there to set up the following episode or the following season, because we are gonna get a Reva show, whether we like it or not.
It's weird.
And she just
her
drags
finding the thing is weird.
Yeah, she just grabs her lightsaber, which just magically becomes whole again. Which we talked about.
I pointed out that
it's plausible
because the last time we see it, Vader's holding both ends, and he didn't rip it apart. It comes apart.
Yeah, he just twisted it apart and separated it.
So the last time we see him is he's holding both halves. It is not outside the realm of possibility.
He could have just connected it and dropped it.
Puts them back together because they're supposed to be one anyway. I saw some people trying to make a big deal of this, that it just magically gets put. Just because you don't see something happen doesn't mean it's impossible for it to have happened.
It's a lapse in editing where it would have been nice to see that.
But it's a very reasonable explanation.
It is a reasonable explanation. So I'm going to go with that because
you don't have to leap far to get there at all. Just he's holding both, puts them back together. The fact that he gives it back is the weird part.
Right. It's I'm just going to leave my mortally wounded, enemy who also happens to be able to use the Force. I'm going to give her a perfectly functioning lightsaber.
Two
she could just
technically.
She could just activate with the Force and then use the propeller method to just chop everybody apart. Spinning lightsabers are stupid.
They are. But it was cool seeing Vader. She's got the spinny lightsaber thing.
She's ha, you can't come at me now.
But he's advancing on her and just slowing it down. That's when he slows it down.
And not because, and I thought about this too. I was is he struggling to slow it down? No. He was just playing with her. He was slowing it down slowly just to lend weight to the fact that you are going to lose and I want you to suffer every second of the up until I kill you.
Everything about this fight is Vader just trying to make her look as bad as possible.
And he literally even says, he's did you think I didn't know that you were who you were?
Yeah, do you think I didn't know, youngling, is what he says.
Yeah.
Implying he knows who she's been the whole time.
Yeah.
None of this
They just used her
exactly
just like Obi-Wan did.
Yeah.
And anyway, so clearly she's not fazed by being stabbed for the second time because she's all propped up.
She's a little out of breath.
She's out of breath, but she's propped up on one shoulder,
maybe
looking at the
lung.
Yeah. Apparently, she has no internal organs and no spine. She's just whatever. I guess the lightsaber was on 30% power. Apparently, all that spinning drained its power cell. So She's propped up on one shoulder, just like, oh, cool, what's this? And,
sees
like,
the
examines the
message from
message,
Bail.
and then, like, looks off the dramatic way that they always do when a character on screen has a revelation. You're supposed to understand that, like, hey, pay attention. They just learned something you should pay attention to.
Right.
And then she's like, son, and just magically jumps to the conclusion that Anakin had children.
She doesn't say that.
No, but she
And I don't know
has a
if that's
look on
the
her
implication.
But she clearly has a look on her face that is supposed to cue the audience in that she just discovered something and she understands what it means. She doesn't look like confused. Maybe it's just Moses Ingram portrayed the wrong emotion in that moment, but she totally looked like she was selling a I got him now look, where she's like, I'm going to come after Luke, and they even show it where they do like a slow pan onto a sleeping Luke.
So the way I read that is like she's clearly going to be going after Luke now.
Yeah,
because
to get
she
back
knows
at
that
Anakin.
Luke, she doesn't know it's Luke, but there is a boy with Owen on Tatooine, and she knows who Owen is.
Yeah, because Senator Organa is an idiot and just advertises the location of like the greatest secret in the universe.
But that read to me like she doesn't know who they actually are.
Possibly.
Like she doesn't. She knows he's important.
But then why would it matter about a boy in the first place? Like they could be just any generic child. Why would it matter unless she was able to put the pieces together and say
only because he's clearly important
to Obi-Wan.
So it's just trying to get back to Obi-Wan.
Right.
It's just trying to get revenge on him is all like
I think Organa might have said like does he know about the children or something.
He does say that, but I don't know if that plays back in the broken message that she's able to get out
right.
of it. But it did not read to me at all that she somehow discovered that Anakin has kids. I did not read that.
We'll see in the last episode.
It clearly played to me as though this was just another child that is clearly important to Bail and Kenobi, and now she has someone else that she can go after to try and draw Kenobi back out to kill him.
It's entirely possible. That's what I misread it. It's totally possible. I guess we'll find out in the 6th episode. But that pretty much wraps up.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. That's the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, there's a lot to like. There's a lot to not like. But if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a like and a subscribe. We would really appreciate it. And if you didn't like the episode, thank you for sticking around anyway. If you could share this with your friends and family, those people you know would appreciate our content. We would really appreciate that. Jeremiah?
And if you are listening to us over on Spotify, thank you so much. If you could follow us and leave us a rating there, that would really help out as well. And we will see you next time.
Later.